Well, folks, the verdict is in as of there you go.
Senior national correspondent Sarah Seidler, she's there on the ground for us. A rather emotional day for all sides, Sarah, in this trial. What's the latest?
Absolutely. A big day here. A jury has come back and returned not guilty verdicts on all 5 counts against Kyle Rittenhouse. There was acceptance by the prosecution, but disappointment, and there was relief from the defense.
Not guilty.
Kyle Rittenhouse, now a free man,
Not guilty.
overcome as the jury acquitted him on all 5 counts in his homicide trial.
Is there anyone who does not agree with the verdicts as read?
Defense attorney Mark Richards saying the wait for a verdict had been torture, but his client is relieved.
He wants to get on with his life. He has a huge sense of relief for what the jury did to him today. He wishes none of this would have ever happened. But as he said when he testified, he did not start this.
The prosecutor responding, while we are disappointed with the verdict, it must be respected. The family of one of the victims, Anthony Huber, saying, we are heartbroken and angry.
Love you, Hannah.
Huber's girlfriend spoke outside the court.
We know that this system is a failure. I think the question most of us are feeling right now is, what can we do next?
The governor has called for calm as a small crowd in Kenosha continues to react to the news.
That young man is a man among men.
A spokesman for the Rittenhouse family echoed the plea for peace.
The family calls for calm. I mean, this was not an injustice.
The unanimous decision did not come swiftly. Weighing a life sentence for 18-year-old Rittenhouse, the jury deliberated for almost 4 full days before delivering the verdict.
All right, members of the jury, it is for you to determine whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty of each of the offenses.
The jury ultimately had to answer one question. Did Rittenhouse kill 2 men and maim another as a form of vigilante justice or self-defense? The defense seized on the testimony of Gage Grosskreutz. Video shows Rittenhouse shot and destroyed Grosskreitz's right bicep in the melee. Still, the survivor gave perhaps the most compelling argument that Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense.
When you were standing 3 to 5 feet from him with your arms up in the air, he never fired, right?
Correct.
It wasn't until you pointed your gun at him, advanced on him, with your gun, now your hands down, pointed at him, that he fired, right?
Correct.
An attorney for Gage Grosskreutz, Kim Motley, sent us a statement about today and was very disappointed, heartbroken over the verdict today because she is representing one of the clients who was shot by Kyle Rittenhouse, saying that while today's verdict means that justice is delayed, it will not be denied. Wolf.
Sarah, I want you to stay with us. I also want to bring in our team of experts, CNN's chief legal analyst Jeffrey Tubin, our senior legal analyst Laura Coates, and criminal defense attorney Joey Jackson. He's also a CNN legal analyst. Laura, this jury found Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty on all charges. What's your reaction?
You know, I'm honestly not surprised by the ultimate verdict in this case because the prosecution had a very hard road ahead of them. The threshold in Wisconsin for trying to establish self-defense made it such that the prosecution had to disprove that Kyle Rittenhouse's belief that he was in fear of his life or grave bodily harm was somehow unreasonable. And he gave very compelling testimony when he testified on the stand. And so the prosecution had to try to disprove that. And remember, the jury instructions here are so key, Wolf. Not only do they talk about having the jury have to view through Kyle Rittenhouse's eyes, not Monday morning quarterback or hindsight of the jury, but also the idea of notion of did he do everything he could to try to escape, even if his presence with the AR-15 was somehow provocation. I think the prosecution had a very uphill battle trying to overcome not only the burden of proof, but also the burden of persuasion in this case.
Joey, what's your analysis of this verdict?
Yeah, this was the battle of two narratives, really. You had the narrative of the prosecution. This was an interloper. He came into town with bad intentions. He was fancying himself a police officer. He was fancying himself an emergency medical technician. He didn't need to be there, and he set off a deadly chain of events that were avoidable. If, from the defense's perspective, they honed in on the facts, and they asked the critical questions. Number one, was he in immediate fear of death or serious bodily injury as to each and every person that he exercised self-defense on? Number two, was his use of force proportionate to the threat that was posed? And number three, did he act reasonably under the circumstances? The defense also painted this very mob-like environment, right? Their words, not mine. Rioters around, mayhem, confusion, volatility, and that was in the context in which they wrapped up his conduct, that is Kyle Rittenhouse, and that's something that the jury accepted. Last point. The last point is that I was one who believed in the event the jurors concluded that he acted in self-defense as to every single victim, right? They would then otherwise not even get into the lesser included. They would just completely acquit him. That's what they did. It is not a shocking verdict at all, given the circumstances and the evidence as it came out in the courtroom.
Well, it was sort of complicated, Jeffrey, to those of us who followed it. Are you surprised it was not guilty across the board, that he wasn't found guilty on some of those lesser charges?
I'm not surprised about the homicide. I am somewhat surprised about reckless endangerment. I thought this was a pretty strong case on reckless endangerment, but I think the facts were a big problem, as they always are in a courtroom, which on the three people he shot, one of them was chasing him. The other one hit him with a skateboard. The third one pulled a gun on him. Those facts were very difficult for the prosecution to refute as on the issue of self-defense. In a larger sense, though, what is especially troubling about this entire case is the way the right wing in this country has made a hero of this kid who never should have been there in the first place.
Right.
I mean, we now know this is a tragedy, not a crime, but it sure is a tragedy. And the idea that 17-year-olds with no training should be going to scenes like this with giant guns is a terrible message to send to the country.
Well, let's follow up on that, Laura.
His mother took him down there.
He came to Kenosha from Illinois. He then armed himself with this AR-15 style rifle, inserted himself into these protests. But how much did that actually factor into today's verdict?
You know, it doesn't factor into the ability of the prosecutor to actually meet their burden, because you can't essentially tell the jury he had no business being there. That's it. You're talking about the notion of a gun culture in Wisconsin that is not synonymous with crime. The idea that you can possess a gun and not be transformed into a criminal is what the prosecution has to actually thread a needle around. How not to alienate a gun-owning community, and also prove that with their strongest argument they brought through in closing, the idea of him possibly being an active shooter. That was their strongest way of essentially threading that needle and suggesting, look, somebody had a right to self-defense that day, but it was the people responding to somebody who had shot and killed somebody. So do you forfeit your life if you try to act heroically and try to stop an active shooter? That was their main theme on the closing. The problem is, they still had to overcome that burden of persuasion and the burden of proof to show that he did not act reasonably with the perceived chaos. And final thing here, remember, the jury is from the community. They also recall not what happened a little bit more than a year ago. They probably had their own viewpoints about the chaos that ensued, their own perceptions, and whether they themselves somehow would have armed themselves. So you've got the community angle of it, you've got the idea of the active shooter not being persuasive enough, and the idea that he had no business being there, that simply was not enough to move the needle.
You know, Sarah, you're there just outside the courthouse. So what's been the reaction that you're seeing?
It's very calm tonight. Throughout this trial, though, every single day, there have been protesters who would come to the steps, right on the steps of the court, right up to the doors of the court. Every day you would see that. About 24 people at max. Some of them were there to decry what they believed Kyle Rittenhouse did. Some of them were there to support Kyle Rittenhouse. There was every day the uncle of Jacob Blake, who was here, and people say, well, why was he there? Well, because the protests were in Jacob Blake's name, and when some of those protests turned to riots, he was there to talk about and to remember the 2 people killed and the person who was injured, who were there out some of them protesting in the name of Jacob Blake. And so you saw this every single day. It never got violent. There were a couple of small incidents that police were right on and took care of right away, the sheriff's department. And there were folks who were out here, 2 or 3 of them, who came out armed, one of them with an AR-15 style rifle. He was told to put that away. But it has been calm. This whole trial, there has been noise, but there has been the First Amendment right of those people to protest. Nothing beyond that has happened. Well,
You know, Jeffrey Rittenhouse was very emotional today hearing the not guilty verdicts. He broke down, started to cry. But a lot of us remember he also broke down while he was testifying on the stand. Did that resonate, do you believe, with the jury that a 17-year-old at the time, now 18-year-old, was actually crying?
In a criminal case, whenever the defendant takes the stand, and it usually doesn't happen, most defendants don't take the stand, it becomes by far the most important evidence in the case. And I think it was clear then, and it's clear now, that Rittenhouse was an effective witness. I don't know about the crime being so significant, but the fact that he could describe the threat he felt from each of the 3 people he shot was very important, I think, for the jury. And the prosecutors, in cross-examining him, didn't have the kind of material that they needed. False statements, other bad acts, a criminal record. They didn't have that cross-examination material, and the jury obviously embraced Rittenhouse's story.
Well, he's free right now, Joey. He's a free man, acquitted on all accounts. But potentially he could still face some other legal problems down the road, right?
It's a potential that he could. I mean, it would mostly be in the civil context. You could look to sue him, that is the victims, from a civil perspective. What's the difference? The difference is that civil cases involve money. They don't involve liberty like this. And the other thing is the standard of proof is far different. Remember, in a civil case, well, if the standard is, did you probably engage in some type of wrongdoing as opposed to did you do it beyond a reasonable doubt? And so that's the thing. There were also calls for a Department of Justice investigation to see what, if any, federal charges would be potentially likely. I don't see that as a viable outcome given the federal statutes. And remember, you can carry a gun across state lines if it's legal to do so, or possess the gun in your state or in the state that you go to. I'm sure the feds will vet that in addition to his age, and if there's something there, they'll pursue that as well. We'll have to wait and see in the days ahead.
We certainly will. All right, guys, thank you very, very much. Just ahead, we're getting more reaction right now to the Rittenhouse verdict.
I'll just hold that. Hey, folks, and 32 Assassin, thanks for commenting. I'm shocked that he wasn't charged with a thing, but on the other hand, it's not. I mean, he went down there. His mom took him down there. And I think he's, from what I just heard right now, from what you just heard, I mean, that he was as my mom just said, she's right, he was misguided. And the one thing that I always observe is he felt remorse. The only thing I didn't like is how people on Fox News were pushing this in a certain way. And I felt like that clouded the ability to understand exactly what happened, because my first thought was, okay, he's guilty. I'm tired of hearing these people. But when you take the politics out of it, he was down there with a gun. He was trying to defend himself. And one thing I remember hearing when this happened in real time, because it did, it was online, is how this guy was walking down the street with his hands up. So he was ready to, he knew that what he did was wrong in the process of defending himself, so he was ready to give himself up, period. It wasn't like he was trying to hide. He was waving, and so, yeah, as my mom says, he's misguided, So yeah. But I hope he believes in God, because the Lord has given him a dramatic second chance at life outside of a prison. And I certainly hope he does the right thing with it. And I certainly hope his mother, who could very well have lost her son, has learned a lesson. Because the person who really is at fault in all of this is his mother. His mother should not have driven him down there. His mother should not have allowed him to have that rifle. But his mother was the enabler. And we have a society today where, because of how we've allowed a lot of our operations and functions to go overseas, and if you want proof, try playing your bill and you wind up talking to someone in another country, that wealth is not here. And so when that wealth isn't here, it's harder to raise a family, and you don't have a government that has a social safety net like it used to. It was trying to rebuild it to help people. So, but people are going to continue to live. They're going to continue to have babies, okay, and raise them. And they're going to do so without the resources they need to provide those kids with a safe environment where they don't have to have guns and enough leisure time to enjoy their life and go to places like Disney World and, just be a kid. That's what gets me about this, okay? Just be a kid. But instead, what we get are this nutcase stuff, and it is nutcase, where something has to be, left wing or right wing, where he has to be a Lionheart. He wasn't Lionheart, he was stupid. He was stupid. He knows it. His mom knows it now, okay? And all the people who are talking and writing comments even here, they're not using their real names. Use your real name. And I certainly hope you don't have kids. Do you? Would you put your kid in harm's way like this? Even if you don't have kids, I hope you don't have that kind of bad judgment, This is about people. This isn't about winning an election. This is about people, okay? And this is about people. And I do agree he was a stand-up guy because he raised his hand. He knew he did something wrong. I don't find anything wrong with him. I find something wrong with the system, okay? I find something wrong with the system that we have created, including people who are commenting who don't seem to want to do anything about it. Kyle's mother should not be in a position, right? And she shouldn't be in a position where she has to, scramble for money to raise him. Is he going to college? What's going on? Okay, and all right. And he says, if those guys in the video, let me tell you something. I wouldn't be down there. I have the option to have my own media company here. Okay, I do things a different way. I don't have to be everywhere. I wouldn't be down there. I don't put myself in danger to prove something. That's stupid. So the answer to the question is, I wouldn't be in that situation. The question is, what kind of situation are you putting yourself in that will govern the rest of your life? And you need to think that way. If you're not thinking that way, there's something wrong with you, okay? And one way or another, don't think that because Kyle Rittenhouse was blessed enough to realize his verdict, that you will receive the same kind of blessing. Don't be stupid, okay? Don't be stupid. Again, don't be stupid. You don't wish you could be in that situation. Because to write that means you're psychotic. You're not even using your real name. Only a psychotic would say that. All right? Only a psychotic would say that. Don't even, okay? At all, all right? So, point is that Kyle is blessed to have this verdict. His mother should be ashamed. And we need to take a look at a society that doesn't give single parents, and particularly single mothers, the kind of resources they need to raise their kids. That's really what's at stake here. It's not a matter of being an upstanding guy or anything. It's a matter of the situation that Kyle grew up in. When he goes home, he's not going to be any wealthier. Well, maybe he will. Maybe there's some right-wing organization that will give him money. I hope so for his sake in this instance, for what's about to come to him. Because the bottom line is he wind up killing 3 people, okay? He wind up killing 3 people. And my heart goes out to those people who lost their lives in that situation. And yeah. So my heart, all right? So, yeah. So well, here's the thing though. The one thing that I am going to do here, and I need it to be known, pure and simple, is that this is not something where mob rule is allowed, okay, at all. And I say that because I've always said this: the mob is psychotic. All right, the mob is psychotic. And so I say that because I cannot allow comments like this one, and I have to let them go. That is not at all what this is about. We have to improve, folks, okay? And we have to, and we will improve as a society. None of this mob, I will not allow mob rule on my channel, okay? So, sorry, folks, it's not a matter of free speech. You want free speech, you go to the corner and you yell, and maybe somebody call the police and have you arrested for disturbing the peace. But society must improve. Understand? It must improve and it will improve. This is not a sign of improvement, okay? So, no, not at all. Not at all, folks, okay? Okay, so my point is, this is not a sign of improvement. He's blessed, all right? He is blessed. And I don't see anybody here saying, oh, he's blessed. The man was blessed. Let's face it. Blessed. Okay? Blessed, blessed, blessed. And we all do need to be united as a country and improve these situations. We're not. And this isn't a matter of race or anything like that. This is a matter of economic situation. He's poor. Okay? Thank you, Andrew. He's poor. And thank you. I appreciate your comment, Andrew. Thank you very much. He's comes from a poor background. Okay? Pure and simple. All right? And God has blessed him on this day, and I hope God keeps him and advances him to a better life. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com.